Here, let's listen to what Am Israel Ha had to say.
Time, if you're ever going to do it, to start a dialogue with Saudi Arabia about the day after.
Right, but the Saudis have also been very clear that what they want in return, that there needs to be a viable, sovereign, independent Palestinian state which the Israelis recognize.
They want two things. For them to recognize the state of Israel, they want a defense agreement with the United States. Saudi Arabia and the United States would have a mutual defense agreement like we have with Japan and Australia. In other words, the United States would go to war for Saudi Arabia. That requires 67 votes in the U.S. Senate. Senator Blumenthal is a Democrat trying to get the votes. I told MBS a year and a half ago, that will be a heavy lift, but I will try.
But the Israelis also have to want to recognize an independent Palestinian state. They're not going to do that.
An independent sovereign nation called Palestine with security guarantees for Israel to make sure there's no
Israel. I love the way he says Israel.
Future October 7th. It will be more like an emirate than it will be a democracy. MBS and MBZ at the UAE will come in and rebuild Gaza.
Oh, that's sick, man. Oh, that seems great. That's great, dude. Let's just give the Gaza Strip to the Saudis. Bro, I know everyone always forgets that these guys are just like absolute dumbass because they're in a position of power. And you obviously have to like consistently remind yourself that like, no, elected representatives can just be as stupid as the next guy, maybe sometimes even dumber. A lot of the major motivation behind statements like this is just pure white supremacist Islamophobia. He's like, they're Arabs. Them other Arabs come in and make Arabia. That's it. That's all. In his mind, he's like, why don't the big Arab eat the little Arab? Like, I don't think he's that stupid, but I think he's that racist. It is it is the same principle behind like, why won't none of these Arab nations accept as Palestinians? Yeah, fuck it, dude. Let Israel invade Lebanon, conquer Lebanon. Fuck it. Let them go all the way to Turkey, you know? Let them bring about the new caliphate under different leadership. Fuck it, YOLO. Seems good to me.
They will reform the PA. They will create an enclave in the Palestine that can live in peace and harmony with Israel. They will stop teaching their children to kill the Jews. A de-radicalized, a demilitarized.
Is that actually true? Is that how they teach it?
Yes, literally. So, bottom line.
Literally, they're teaching their children to hate the Jews. It's like, no, dude, they're not teaching their children to hate the Jews. They hate Israel because Israel blows up their fucking schools. That's how they learn to hate Israel. I can't believe they're not teaching their children to love the state of Israel after Israel blew up the school.
A de-radicalized, a demilitarized Palestinian enclave is what Israel wants. And here's the rub. After October the 7th, declaring a Palestinian state after the attack would be seen as rewarding terrorism. That's the universal view of the Jewish people. The two-state solution, as we know it, died on October the 7th.
You think it's dead?
I think as it's been envisioned in the past, it is. And I think that was the goal of the Iranians. If you don't have a day after plan like I described, Hamas will come back. If you don't have a day after plan like I described, Hezbollah will regenerate.
By the way, that's a gross thing to say. Dude, Christian Zionists always sidestepping Jewish Zionists, like always and forever. It's kind of funny. The way Christian Zionists operate is so nutty, dude. I think it's partially because like as Christian Zionists, like they don't experience any sort of like real, like, because if you're a Jewish Zionist, like you still get hit with like anti-Semitism and stuff. Like there's a level of marginalization that you probably experienced growing up. And I think that's the reason why Christian Zionists oftentimes are way outflanking Jewish Zionists in general. Because like they never had, if you're like a white evangelical Christian in the United States of America, there has never been a force over your head. Like you have to invent shit. So you just absolutely will say some of the most unhinged shit. Jews have a different brain that makes them want to love Israel. That all Jews, the international Jewry is responsible. They want Israel to be as violent as possible. I'm saying this as a man who loves Israel. It's like, dude, how are you any different than a Nazi at that point? Like, what the are you saying? Like, what are you saying? Their universal view amongst the international jury is to kill every Arab in the region. Like, that's insane.
And you'll have 50 years of Israel half in and half out. There will be no normalization. Nobody's going to come to this region to do business because it's going to be on fire.
Let me change my,
I literally missed this guy being insanely racist, and also missed the top of the hour ad break, which I'm running now.
And according to your website, you're also, I'm going to quote here, a longtime Democratic Party activist who served as a member of the 2016 Democratic National Convention's Platform Standing Committee, close quote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You support Hamas, do you not?
Senator, oddly enough, I'm going to say thank you for that question because it demonstrates the purpose of our hearing today in a very effective way.
Let's start first with a yes or no.
Hamas is a foreign terrorist organization that I do not support, but you asking the executive director of the Arab American Institute that question very much puts the focus on the issue of hate in our country.
Well, I got your answer, and I appreciate it. What is the...
That's so cool that, like, just sitting senators at the Senate Judiciary Committee could just straight up do, like, hate crimes and shit. You know what I mean? That's cool, man. Well, you're Arab, so you must be Hamas too. I mean, this is not new, by the way. This is like, it happened in a way that went super viral when Tom Cotton, another one of these racist assholes, was like, you know, what kind of Chinese are you? And the dude was like, Senator, I'm Singaporean. Well, Singapore is a different type of China. So tell me now, what type of Chinese are you, boy? Can you tell me what kind of Hamas you are? Explain to me. Since you're Arab, please can you state on the record that as an Arab, you automatically are Hamas?
You support Hezbollah too, don't you?
Again, I find this line of questioning extraordinarily disappointing,
Is that a
Senator.
no?
That you have Arab American constituents that you represent in your great state.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that, but my time's limited, and I apologize, but is that a yes or a no?
A yes or no question to do I support Hezbollah? The answer is I don't support violence, whether it's Hezbollah, Hamas, or any other entity that invokes it.
You can't bring yourself to say no, can you?
No, I can say no. I can say yes.
But
what
you
I can
haven't.
She's literally saying no. And he's like, but I don't believe you because you're Arab. By the way, that's already a loaded question because the answer, you can't have like an honest answer in that situation because like everyone is automatically under the assumption that like these are terror cells and they're bad and they're Arab and they're Muslim and they're scary and they want to bomb America. So like you can't even have a normal fucking conversation about this shit. So especially as an Arab person, good luck.
say is
You just
your
can't
line
make
of
yourself
questioning.
do it. Do you
Senator.
support or oppose Iran and their hatred of Jews?
Again, I'm going to emphasize Iran.
Oh, I like that he's also, now he's like, what about Iran and their Jew hatred? I can't tell you what he deserves, you know? I wonder if we'll ask, do you support Saudi Arabia?
On Hezbollah, Hamas, none of them is going to this
you
discussion.
can't bring yourself to say no, can
Sir,
you?
I don't support.
It's real simple.
Excuse me. I'm going to,
Ian,
if I may, as a Muslim woman, sir, I'm going to tell you I do not support Iran. But what I will tell you is that this conversation.
I'm running out of time. I'm
Okay.
sorry. You called our decision to cut funding. You called our decision to cut fund. Well, first, what's the United Nations Relief and Works Agency?
It's UNRWA, which is the institution that exists to provide services and aid to the nearly 6 million Palestinian refugees.
And you called our decision to cut funding for them, quote, an incredible moral failure, close quote.
That is absolutely correct. But again, I would suggest that conversation is about foreign policy.
We did that because 9 UNRWA staff members were fired for actually helping Hamas on October 7th. Isn't that the case?
I don't believe that that's correct in terms
Let
of...
me ask you one more time. You support Hamas, don't you?
I'm not going to say what I think. I mean, this is just pure, unadulterated, unrestricted, insane levels of bigotry. Like, he is behaving like Reddit debate lord or some shit. It is reprehensible, vile. It's disgusting. It is he's like one step removed from saying that, you know, you did 9/11 to some random Arab woman. Ironic considering that this is a committee hearing on combating hate crimes, which is now turned into doing more hate crimes. Turns out the Senate Judiciary hearing was about doing hate crimes.
You support UNRWA and Hamas, don't you?
Sir,
Please.
I think it's exceptionally disappointing that you're looking at an Arab American witness before you and saying you support Hamas.
You know what's disappointing to me?
I do not support Hamas.
Bring yourself
I do
to
not
say
support Hamas
you don't
or
support UNRWA. You don't support Hamas. You don't.
I was very clear in my support for UNRWA.
Hezbollah, and you don't support Iran. You should hide your head in a.
That's so crazy because she has said it, but because she's not a human being to you, you're not there to hear what she has to say.
Get an Arab American witness before you and saying you support Hamas.
You know what's disappointing to me?
I do not support Hamas.
Bring yourself
I do
to
not
say
support Hamas
you don't
or
support UNRWA. You don't support Hamas. You don't.
I was very clear in my support for UNRWA.
Hezbollah, and you don't support Iran. You should hide your head in a bag.
Your time has expired. Please, Ms. Berry, I'm going to allow you to respond to anyone or all.
Dick Durbin, you shouldn't have censured him right there. Like, what are we doing here? Isn't that your job? Don't you have any powers at your disposal to be like, hey, man, maybe this is a stain on the greatest deliberative body that has ever existed, the fucking Senate. You know, that's the way they used to promote it.
All those questions at this point.
Senator Durbin, thank you very much for holding this hearing and for elevating the issue of hate crime. It's regrettable that as I sit here, have experienced the very issue that we're attempting to deal with today. The introduction of foreign policy is not how we keep Arab Americans or Jewish Americans or Muslim Americans or Black people or Asian Americans, anybody safe. This has been regrettably a real disappointment, but very much an indication of the danger to our democratic institutions that we're in now. And I deeply regret that, and I do hope that my testimony today has been helpful to understanding the need to respond to hate.
Over the weekend, I went to a synagogue in my hometown of Springfield. There was a bar mitzvah for a dear friend of mine. I couldn't help but notice the security guards that were posted for this bar mitzvah. In addition, I went to a meeting where a dear friend of mine, a Jewish friend of mine in Chicago, she's been my friend and worked for me for 40 years, was almost in tears over the anti-Semitism that she has witnessed. She was wearing a Star of David around her neck, and she said, I do that.
What is going on? He's like, hey, nice of you with your anecdotes about, well, not even an anecdote. I can't understand how we're just moving on from what just took place at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on combating hate crimes, where a sitting senator did hate crimes back to back, like sequential. He comboed hate crimes against an Arab woman. This is insane.
Because I won't give up. I won't give up. I thought about it for this hearing, but I also thought about Wadia, a 6-year-old boy. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter. I love her like life itself. I cannot imagine this poor little boy answering the door and losing his life because he's Palestinian. My God, we can't see those things that I've just said in the same sentence without some people saying, oh, you've just chosen sides. I'm not choosing sides here.
He's talking about one of the first Islamophobic attacks that took place when a landlord stabbed his tenant to death.
Except for the side of, I hope, common decency and democracy. We've got to have this conversation. We've got to do it in a civilized manner. I regret some of the things that were said today at this hearing. But we are a free nation, and that's what happens in a democracy. As sad and as disquieting as it may be, that is part of it. The title of today's hearing was inspired by Dr. King's.
He said your head should be in a bag. Here's Zaid Jilani. A week ago, Ted Cruz posted an image claiming the Haitian immigrants were devouring people's cats, a claim that has been boosted by neo-Nazi groups who marched in Springfield. Now he's upset about anger and hate, especially anti-Semitism, if you believe
but when
that.
it comes to anti-Semitism, the Democrats have a problem. I would note this is occurring in blue states with blue governors because the Democrat Party is terrified of the pro-Hamas wing of their party. In states like Texas and Florida, we don't allow this. At the University of Texas, when violent protesters threatened Jewish students, police officers arrived and arrested them. That's what happened when you enforce the law. Every Republican member of this committee asked the chairman to hold a hearing on anti-Semitism in February. And yet we don't get a hearing on anti-Semitism. We get a hearing generically on hate because this administration, and this is the kind of anger and hate that is encouraged. You're now seeing the hate manifesting right here. Interestingly enough,
Please, the committee will come to order. The senator is recognized to finish his remarks.
So we now have.
I hate our politicians so much. I hate our politicians so much. Oh my God. It's gross, dude.
A demonstration of anti-Semitism. We have a demonstration of the hate. Rabbi Goldfeder, let me ask you, has the Biden administration cut off the funding of any of the colleges that have allowed this hate? Have they indicted anyone for funding these violent protests? Have they indicted the people paying for the matching tents? Or have they sat there silently, and have the universities sat there silently while their students are terrified to go to class?
They have not indicted anyone.
They have not indicted anyone. Has any university had their funding cut off for allowing this sort of violent intimidation?
Not a single university.
The violent intimidation is saying that our tuition shouldn't go to planting and defending an apartheid regime, by the way. The unimaginable violence. This apartheid regime that has nothing to do with Judaism, mind you. But hey, we'll bring a fucking rabbi here to be like, no, you don't understand, actually. All Jews love Israel, okay? And it's objectively anti-Semitic to say anything but the fact that Israel has to keep prosecuting this genocide. The only violence that has taken place in these protests is the counter-protesters have come in and beat the shit out of the student protesters. We've been there. I went and I visited the encampments. I showed you what it looked like. Scumbags, all of these people. Counter-protesters and cops. That's the only time actual violence took place.
I can tell you this. Next year, if there is a Republican majority on this committee, you will see real leadership. And next year, if there's a Republican administration, you will see people prosecuted for this sort of violence. This is being tolerated with the looking away, the blind eye being turned from this administration and this Department of Justice. And it is utterly disgraceful. And under Title VI, any university that allows this should have their funding cut off.
Senator's time has expired.
Once again, this is supposed to be combating hate, and the only type of hate that they perceive is just saying that America's ally Israel is an apartheid state, which is objective reality, and is doing a genocide, which is also objective reality. That's anti-Semitic hate. Not the Jews will not replace us guys marching to the streets. Those are very fine people. How dare you? You know, those are some very fine Nazis, man. How dare you? This is fascism, dude. Largest U.S. cities saw record hate crimes surge. Yeah, the problem with the hate crime data now is that ADL is the institution that tracks all the anti-Semitism data. Unless they're getting this directly from the police, which is crazy to say. Well, I guess it says Houston saw 85 hate crimes in 2023, a massive 193% increase from the year before. The problem with the anti-Semitism hate crime database is that if you say Palestine, free Palestine, it's logged as a goddamn hate crime. If you say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that's a hate crime. In New York, anti-Jewish hate crimes rose 12.6%, while Los Angeles saw 48% jump, and Chicago experienced a 10% increase. Anti-Jewish hate crimes, which spiked in the fall of 2023, following the violent conflict in the Middle East, have supplanted Black Americans as the most targeted group in America's 10 largest cities. Of note, anti-Black and anti-gay hate crimes were the second and third most common. Anti-Jewish hate crime is likely to reach a record when national data is released by the FBI this year. Anti-Muslim hate crime, which also had significant spikes in the fall in larger cities, likely will hit its highest since the middle of the last decade. If you were to fucking talk about anti-Muslim hate crimes, what constitutes as a hate crime that is anti-Semitic is much different than what constitutes a hate crime that is Islamophobic. For example, what that senator did in that meeting is a hate crime, and a real hate crime, not like saying free Palestine is considered a hate crime, But by a lot of standards, by a lot of metrics, what he did would not be considered a hate crime. And what those protesters that were doing in the seats saying free Palestine, that would be considered a hate crime. Just so you understand how this data looks like. I did read it. It said anti-Muslim hate crimes also jumped 22%, 40%, and 300% in the same cities, respectively. Anti-Muslim hate crimes jumped 300% in Chicago. Where are the hearings? Bro, they're doing a hate crime hearing, and the first thing that they chirp about is literally doing more hate crimes. You're conflating hate speech and hate crimes here. You're getting mixed up. Dude, what are you talking about? The ADL definition considers saying free Palestine to be a hate incident, okay? A hate crime, an anti-Semitic hate crime. I know what I'm saying. Yes, hate speech is often a hate crime. It doesn't have to be like, you know, stabbing a person and saying that like, you're stabbing them for their background or something.